The gluten-free craze is everywhere. You go into any grocery store and you'll be overwhelmed with over 45,000 products labeled gluten-free. In fact, Americans spend over $6 billion going gluten-free just last year. But is this just a marketing ploy? Or could gluten really be the secret reason why you're bloated, you're sick and tired? Could it cause a chronically upset stomach, migraines, or even joint pain? Well, today, I have the test you must take to find out if gluten is your body's biggest enemy. But first, let me start by explaining what gluten really is, so you understand it. It's a natural protein found in wheat, it's in barley, it's in rye. It allows breads to be fluffy. It gives it that nice texture that you like. It allows pizza dough to be nice and stretchy like this. Right? So much of what we associate the elegance of pizza to. It even is used to thicken and take some of these smooth soups and sauces and make them just the right texture for you. But gluten is also found in tons of processed foods. It's in cookies, it's in pasta, beer, salad dressing, even granola bars. But is this tiny protein harmful? I want you to meet Dr. Neil Barnard. He's been studying gluten his whole career, and he's here to help end the confusion. Welcome back to the show.
Hi.
Great to be back. We hear about gluten all the time these days. How much of a concern is it really for you? I know you deal with this day in and day out.
It's a huge concern because gluten is such a chameleon. You think, I've got irritable bowel, I've got brain fog. You could think that you're becoming demented, but the problem really relates to the gluten. And a recent study showed there are over 50 different conditions that can be attributable to the gluten. Things like anemia, osteoporosis. A person gets one test after another. They're starting getting treatment for depression. They're getting side effects. It's all related to the foods that they're eating. And when they get away from it, the symptoms vanish.
I like the idea of a chameleon disease because I see so many vague complaints, it's hard to tie them together. I hear it all the time from our audience. It's a possibility. Why is it so common now?
Well, part of it is an increased awareness, but that's not all there is to it. There really is a major increase in gluten sensitivity and gluten problems. It could be really two reasons. One is that there are more and more hybrids of wheat that are being developed all the time. There are 25,000 different varieties of them now. Some may have more gluten. The other thing is, if you think about it, decades ago, people made bread at home. And it had a long leavening process. And during that process, the gluten ends up being broken up. Nowadays, bread comes from a factory. And they're impatient to get it on the shelves. And so there's not so much time. And there may be more gluten in the final product.
I got to say, at some point, almost everything has a genetic element to it. Do you think gluten's mostly in our genes and it's there to stay? Or is it something that we acquire as we live our lives?
Well, you are not born with it. It can come on at any point. It can come on even in mid to later adulthood. But what you are born with are the genes that allow it to happen.
So you think that there are things, environmental changes, that are driving most of the increase that we're seeing?
I think it's partly that, and also it takes time for the environment to interact with the genes to express themselves as the time goes by.
And can you walk everybody through exactly how this itty-bitty protein, gluten, that's found in the wheat and the barley and the rye that I spoke of, actually causes damage to the body?
The problem is that the body recognizes the gluten as a foreign protein, it mounts a response, but the body overreacts and ends up attacking the various tissues of the body.
So, I love demonstrations. So I've got a little demo for everybody because I really want to hammer this point home. So imagine that you're living your life, enjoying everything that goes along with living the good life, and this is your body. In fact, it's your intestinal system specifically. And your intestines are full of all kinds of cells, but they also have tissues in there. The first time you eat something with gluten, let's say this sort of reddish material represents gluten in whatever food that you may be eating. And again, a lot of times it doesn't say it has gluten in it. You may not even realize that some of these products have it in there. Every time you do that, though, a little bit of gluten is included in the meal, and it creates a little bit of a reaction, a little bit of a fizzy, a little bit of an irritation. Every time you have something else that has some gluten in it, you're going to get more of that reaction, but it's going to get larger and larger and larger. And as you, without realizing it, take more and more of these foods into your body, you start to create a significantly larger reaction. And as that firing continues, that inferno begins to race through your body, you end up with this. If your entire intestinal system looks like this, you're not going to feel well. It causes symptoms like diarrhea, irritable bowel. You get skin symptoms, rashes, because inside your body, that raging inferno is causing problems affecting everything within the body, including neurologic issues. Sometimes you just don't feel so sharp. You start to feel a little bit foggy. And that's why Dr. Barnard speaks of the issue of a chameleon type ailment. So many different problems that we're all complaining about could be explained because inside your intestines, that's what's going on inside the body. So Dr. Barnett, if you can come join me, I want to walk everyone through how gluten reacts in the body, because it's not the same for everybody. And I want to be clear on who needs to worry about this. So walk me through on the spectrum how gluten affects us all.
All right. It starts with celiac disease. With celiac disease, you see the doctor does tests. The intestinal tract really is damaged. You can see it. You do blood tests, you see antibodies. These people really are sick. But that's about 1% of people.
Okay.
A bigger group is what we're going to call gluten sensitive. Gluten sensitive people, they have all the same symptoms. Their digestive tract is acting up, they've got brain fog. In fact, a recent study showed there are more than 50 different symptoms that are related to this. These people are at increased risk of dying as a result of their conditions. All the tests are negative. And so they are told it's all in your head. They are misdiagnosed for years. The third group is people that I'm going to call gluten-friendly. And these are people where they don't have any overreaction to it. They can eat a slice of bread. They can have a plate of spaghetti. The body does not mount the overreaction, so they can eat these foods with absolutely no problem, and there's no need for them to avoid them.
So there are three basic things we got to worry about. And if you look at it all together, come walk with me a little bit, what would you estimate is the total number of Americans who have gluten sensitivity or celiac disease?
It could be as many as 20 million easily. That's about 1 in 10 adults. Yeah.
1 in 10
adults. And most of them, I have to say, have no clue. They're getting test after test, treatment after treatment, side effect after side effect, and they never had the understanding that that's what it was. So the key is they have to know the symptoms to look for.
Are we all clear on this? Imagine that. 1 in 10 of you right now might have gluten sensitivity. It's a pretty good estimate, by the way. And we don't have a single good test, a test that a doctor would do to figure out if you've got it.
There is no blood test. There is no genetic test that can show that you've got that problem. You've got to know the symptoms.
So what we decided to do is to create a self-test to see how gluten might affect you. Everyone in the studio has a clipboard. So we're going to diagnose a lot of folks today with this test. So you just watch for now and write down little notes to yourself and share this quiz with your friends if you need to. And what you need to do is count, when you're going through this list, how many of these problems you have on a regular, chronic basis. All right, ready to get started? How many of the following digestive symptoms do you have? You have bloating or gas. Have you been diagnosed with IBS or acid reflux? Do you have diarrhea or constipation? All right, so that's the basic test for digestive intestinal issues. Pretty classic things we'd expect to see. Nothing surprising there. All right, now shift gears. How many neurologic or skeletal symptoms do you have? Specifically, do you have migraines or headaches? Do you have joint aches and pains? And do you have that brain fog you've heard a lot about today? And the third item in our quiz, how many hormonal or immune symptoms do you have? These include depression or anxiety, ongoing fatigue, chronic eczema or acne. Now add up your score. Okay, I just gave you a list of about 9 things. If you have more than 4 symptoms in this audience, I want you to stand up. Let's see the people who have more than 4 symptoms. I think my whole audience is gluten sensitive. That's a lot of people. People are falling over even. I mean, they're falling over each other trying to get up. That's a lot of people. This is, in our audience, at least more, it's probably more like 20%. But if in fact 1 in 10, and maybe more people, because we often underestimate these, have gluten intolerance. And I do think for many of you, gluten may be impacting on your health, and we're about to get you some answers. So if folks have symptoms that they think are related to gluten sensitivity, what should they do?
Well, even if you have just one of those symptoms, it's worth thinking about that gluten could be the problem. So do go see your doctor, but what the doctor is probably going to ask you to do is to test it out with a gluten-free diet to see if the symptoms then resolve.
So there is no simple blood test for this.
That's right.
The best way to figure out if you've got a problem with gluten is to do what we're about to teach you about. So walk me through a gluten-free diet. What's the best way to do it?
Okay, there's just 3 things that you need to be concerned about: wheat, rye, and barley. Now, those are the foods that contain the gluten. The problem is that traces of them can be in a lot of other foods. You go online and you see the 1,000 things you have to avoid. You could go crazy. So let me make it easy on you.
Please do.
Any food that is just one ingredient does not have gluten in it. If it's something like broccoli or grapefruit or all the fruits, the lentils and so forth, you know exactly what's in it. There's no ingredient label. It's going to be easy for you to be gluten-free.
So let's walk through these. This is not a deprivation diet. I can tell you, you'll lose weight on a gluten-free diet if you do it the right way. Do it the wrong way, you'll probably gain weight. So single ingredient products, generally speaking, are good for you. We talked about produce. Meats and fish are fine. Dairy is reasonable as well. Lentils, nuts, rice, corn. And of course, you get to have chocolate. Is that good news? Yeah. I knew they would celebrate that. You can have things that you want to have and still be gluten-free and not be torturing your intestinal system, creating these little wildfires and you got to put out all the time. Now, let's talk about gluten-free products. I started this program talking about the $6 billion we spend on these. I see them everywhere. I have major concerns about these, but you're the world expert in this area, so teach us.
It's a huge market out there, and marketing is unfortunately a big part of it. Now, they are convenient, but many of them have more sugar added. They got more calories than you need. Some have had the fiber removed. You don't necessarily need to go that route.
Can I speak clearly on this theme, from my personal opinion? Getting G-free, gluten-free foods is a bad idea if you have a gluten-friendly gut, because you don't need to go there. You don't need to pay a price, and that's often what you're doing to get that trade-off. It's a mediocre idea, I think, actually, oftentimes, if you're gluten sensitive, because there are better ways of getting many of those dietary needs that you have into your daily regimen. So if you want to eliminate gluten from your diet and you want to get some advice from a professional, how do you find the right kind of doctor to give you that advice?
Well, you should start with your primary care doctor. Now, they vary a lot. Some are up to speed. Others need to be pushed a little bit. Sooner or later, they are going to refer you to a gastroenterologist who can do the specialized testing.
Right. So you can find those. You ask these questions. Be brave about this. Go in there and say, do you know a lot about gluten ideas with regard to my diet? You're an integrative gastroenterologist. You can use some keywords and push a little bit to make sure you make some space for yourself, because it's your body you're protecting. And again, the medical field, we're a little behind the times on this. If you've got those symptoms we talked about, show up in your own life. Okay?
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on new videos to live the good life.